Hello, my name is Heath Jones, and I'm the pastor of Northwood Christian Church. And today I'm recording this for two audiences, and probably will do so in the future. The first audience, the most regular audience, is our Facebook and YouTube crowd, and that's probably where you're seeing this right now. But I should mention that we have a podcast as well, and it's something that we've been building slowly over the last year and a half. And I just want to make you aware, if you were unaware, that we have this called the Northwood Podcast, and it is made available by way of our local news station here, Wish TV or Channel 8, and it's produced by All Indiana Podcast Network, which is a network that produces podcasts all across the state, across various topics. And if you'd like, you could check out more of these websites at Wish TV's website, wishtv.com/podcasts, and I'll provide the link in the description below. And if you'd like to learn more about our church in the meantime, I'd encourage you to visit our website at www.indncc.org. That's www.indncc.org. And there you can learn from that website how to get involved in the life-giving work that Northwood is already doing. Or if you'd like to support us monetarily, there's a giving link on that website, as well as a giving link provided in the links below. Now, if you are listening by way of podcasts, we'll take this time to pause for some advertisements. But if you are watching on Facebook or on YouTube, let's go ahead and get to it. And today, we'll be going over a Bible passage that's found in the 12th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. And we'll be going over verses 32 through 40. And it goes as follows. Do not be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights in giving you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to those in need. Make for yourselves wallets that don't wear out, a treasure in heaven that never runs out. No thief comes near there, and no moth destroys. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be too. Be dressed for service and keep your lamps lit. Be like people waiting for their master to come home from a wedding celebration, who can immediately open the door for him when he arrives and knocks on the door. Happy are those servants whom the master finds waiting up when he arrives. I assure you that when he arrives, he will dress himself to serve. Seat them at the table as honored guests and wait on them. Happy are those whom he finds alert, even if he comes at midnight or just before dawn. But know this, if the homeowner had known what time the thief was coming, he wouldn't have allowed his home to be broken into. You also must be ready, because the human one is coming at a time when you don't expect him. That last little bit was about a surprise, and some people don't like surprises. Some do, depending on what the surprise is. You probably know someone, though, who had a surprise party thrown for them and they didn't like it at all. And they found some way of communicating that to the one who threw it or their friends. Maybe they found some way of letting you know, if you threw it for them, that in the future it would be better if you just give them some kind of heads up before they are jumped, even if it is a surprise party in their honor, because they don't like feeling overwhelmed or perhaps made anxious by the shock. And as for me, I'll say it depends. It depends on my mood that day, but it mostly depends on what the surprise is itself. If I am surprised by something off-putting or unpleasant or challenging, I don't like it. I am like so many other people. Who can blame me? Today's passage is about preparing to be surprised by God. But one of the metaphors used may throw us. And I'm speaking specifically of Jesus' choice to describe the coming of God's realm, or God's kingdom as it's often translated. We'll say God's realm, He describes this as a thief that breaks into your house in the night. Now, there's a surprise, but not one that we want. You know what it's like being startled at night. A few years ago, I lived through a very unpleasant surprise in the dead of night. I was fast asleep. I remember the time was 2:30 a.m. when all of a sudden, the alarm started ringing loudly in my house. And I woke up in a state of fear, heightened anxiety, confusion. I turned to my wife, say, "What is it?" She says, "I don't know, let me go and see." Because, we have one of those security systems, one that notifies the authorities on its own if something is amiss, and then sends a loud siren through the house that woke us all up. And it's a good thing to have. The thing is, sometimes the alarm goes off by accident. Sometimes someone maybe opens the door without disarming the system, or perhaps someone creates too much smoke on the stove, setting off the fire alarm that is hardwired into the system. And when it has gone off by accident, we usually scramble, get this thing off as fast as we can once we determine that there is no harm or danger. But it's hard to determine that because it's amazing how poorly we can think and process our situation when we are caught off guard like that. There I was, no shoes, no pants, and I even forgot to grab the pepper spray that I had hidden near my bed for just such an occasion, not even on my mind when push comes to shove. When the situation comes as suddenly as a thief in the night, we nearly always find ourselves to be unprepared, and I know that I certainly was. But do my duty, go downstairs to check it out, and I remember staring bleary-eyed at the alarm panel, and it read, "Hallway fire alarm." So I disarmed the blasted thing, and the ringing stopped, but it still felt as though the noise were reverberating through my chest. I may be a minute out from getting out of bed, but the whole while I felt as though my body were shot with adrenaline. Now silence, I wait, the ringing doesn't start up again. I check every room in the house, no sign of smoke, no smell of gas, no intruder I could spot. So I could find no reasons why the alarm may sound, and so I began to complain in my head. A dialogue meant for the security company when I called them on the phone and let them know just how unpleasant it was to be surprised like that in the middle of the night. So I go upstairs and I notice that my wife is on the phone and she's talking to that security system company. She hangs up and tells me that the fire department is on the way. And I said, didn't they call and ask if this was a true emergency? Because you see, they're supposed to call. They're supposed to ask if we are in any real danger. So now I'm annoyed that they have not called me. And she says to me, well, look at your phone. And sure enough, they had called twice. Now, I had my phone on night mode, which means that only calls that we receive from our closest friends or persons we've put on a list will go through, or people who call 3 times in a short span of time. My security company called twice. So now I know that the fire department is on the way. I put on some shorts and a t-shirt and I wait for the fire trucks to arrive. I'm standing on my sidewalk at 2:45, 15 minutes after the fact, looking up at my neighbors' windows, praying that none of them will notice the late night commotion, as they always do. The fire trucks turn down my street. 7 minutes response time, I remember. Not bad. File that away. Glad to hear that they can move fast, but we don't need them now. Firefighter steps out and I say, sorry, sir, it's my security system. I don't know why it sounded off. Then I sheepishly explain the rest of the story as I have explained it to you. I go back inside. Now it's 2:50. 20 minutes have passed. It's time for me to get some rest. Yeah, right. My heart is still pounding. So I right then program our phone so that the next time the security company needs to call, it will go through, even when our phones are on night mode. But my mind is still racing. At moments, I feel as though I can still hear the alarm pulsing through the house, so I breathe. Slow breaths. Close my eyes. try not to think about the fact that I never went into the basement to check for smoke. Perhaps I should go into the basement right now. You know how the mind works in these moments in the middle of the night when we are surprised. But then I determined I must have checked it, and so I'm still trying to wind down. An hour passes. Now it's 3:30 for the rest of the night. You know how it would go. I'm sure I did sleep, but I remember it as though a restless night spent, punctuated by new shots of adrenaline when I think that I hear something, amplified by worry about my life generally speaking, those thoughts that occur to you in the middle of the night. And as I wrote down these words, wondering how it might feel to encounter a thief in the night, which I thankfully never have had to do. These are the memories these things I'm describing to you are the memories that help me to connect to my story. Expectancy, to be sure. Surprise, yes, but the wrong kind. All this to say, what is Jesus playing at, saying that the coming of God's realm will be like a thief coming in the middle of the night? What a metaphor to use. Surely there's something else he could have compared it to, especially after saying those pleasant words about not worrying. Do not worry, little flock, describing us as his sheep and he our shepherd caring for us. Don't worry. You're about to barge into my life like a thief and you tell me not to worry. You've got to be kidding me. When the alarm sounds, I'm shot full of anxiety and fear. When I'm surprised in a bad way. But let's hit the brakes for a moment and reflect. I suppose that our impetus to worry may depend on the nature of the surprise, as I've alluded to before. Who is this thief that's going to bust in on us, and what does this surprise bring with it? And it turns out, punchline here, that what surprises us when the realm of God arrives, of a sudden, is everything hoped for and everything good. This is why Jesus tells us not to be afraid. And we've been hearing about it for a long time, this realm of God. Jesus claimed to have brought it with him and to have made it available in his coming. He explained it different ways, by different stories or parables, or by way of his actions. And he said that he came to us to set captives free, to give sight for the blind, to heal our broken hearts, and to liberate those who were even economically oppressed. Top-down liberation. So there's the surprise. And this may be a surprise if it were to happen, but it's the one we want. Imagine a surprise like that. You're navigating your way through life and suddenly you turn a corner and surprise! The hungry in your city are fed. Prisoners are reformed and reconciled to their community. Formerly blind leaders have eyes now and are finally have the ability to see wisdom. And those who struggle in poverty are finding traction for once in their lives. All nations reconciled. That's a part of it. We are told all nations reconciled. So this is a surprise that breaks in upon us and changes everything for the good. Light breaks through the darkness. Surprise. Those who have longed for justice have it. Surprise. The justice of God brings about avenues for repentance and reconciliation between persons and peoples who were formerly enemies. Those who are poor, lonely, or otherwise disenfranchised find a place in the new communities that God creates along with us. All of this suddenly, again, surprise. We need a good surprise these days. And we are told by Jesus that it will come. And these parables suggest that it will come when we least expect it. So in the meantime, these teachings of Jesus are mostly about what to do in the meantime. So in the meantime, keep your head up. God's help is on the way. While you are waiting, keep your head up. Hold to hope. It will arrive. Your help will come. Don't lose heart. Which leads to the first takeaway from today's reflections, which is a message of hope for those who feel hopeless. That verse that we begin with, verse 32, don't be afraid, little flock, because your Father delights in giving you the kingdom. Many of us feel as disoriented as possible these days in this present moment. Our experiences of the world right now may well be as one disoriented by the sudden arrival of a thief in the night. We stumble out of bed, metaphorically in life, and we check our phones, and you read the news all bad. And you think to yourself, yep, everything is still crazy, just like the world was when I left it. Everything is still burning, the world at war, the climate going nuts, and disputes over the nature of reality itself. And the list of our problems is extensive and overwhelming. And perhaps, in this context, you've lost hope. I understand. There's ample reasons for pessimism these days, and if you ask the unconverted part of myself, the part not yet conformed to the message and perspective of Jesus, of which there is a substantial part in me, if you ask that part of me, then I'd say that things aren't likely to get better anytime soon. It seems as though lots of people feel this way. The parable of the thief that arrives suddenly in the night is meant to convince us to hold on to hope. Never give up on the possibility that we are about to live through a wild surprise, a good surprise. As suddenly as a thief arriving, but what it brings is everything that we've wanted. And I don't know when, but something is going to happen. And if God is over us all, then we can trust that God will surprise the human race as suddenly as this thief, but one that comes to restore and not to take from us. So first takeaway, hold on to hope. If you feel hopeless, hold fast to this hope that our saving is imminent. Expect to be surprised by God suddenly and wondrously, and don't miss it. The second takeaway has to do with what to do in the meantime. I keep talking about the meantime, and as I said before, these teachings are mostly about this, what to do in the meantime. What are we to do while we wait for God to fix the world? And the answer, in the meantime, we get busy fixing it ourselves. Don't wait around. Instead, invest your time and energies in the realm of God that is coming, will come, and may even be very close. And while we wait for the glorious surprise of God's breaking in, live into the values of God's realm even now. You don't have to wait. And this is what we try and do at church. We try to cultivate pockets of life in a world that it seems hell-bent on its own destruction. And when this happens, we discover that we do not need to wait for God's realm. It comes, and we experience it in real time, in part, and taste in part what we hope to someday experience in full. So in light of what you've heard, reprioritize your life. Don't wait for it. Don't be overly attached to your possessions, clinging to those in the meantime. Jesus gives instructions in verses 33 and 34 about what we are to do with our things. Give it to the poor so that you might bless them as God has blessed you. Treasure the realm of God far more than any other thing. Plant your heart into that world, into the future that God envisions and will create for us. Use what resources you've got to bring the realm of God near and to bless others. No one can steal the joy from such a life from you. And this is what Jesus means for us to be ready. Or as Jesus puts it, be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. What can this mean? Simple. Lamps produce light. The oil that fuels them was symbolic of God's Spirit and anointing and of the good works the people would do. And while we wait in expectant hope for God's love to transform the world, we continue to shine. We light our lamps. We keep them going. We hold up our lives as a light and a hope for others. We, a people filled with God's Spirit, invite others into this hope that we've found. These instructions are for those who seem to be biding their time, waiting for the end, like so many religious folks seem to be doing these days. Well, we are not called to wait around. This parable points us to a life far different. Verse 36, be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. While we are waiting for the world to change, we are supposed to get busy, setting the table for the one who is to come. It's as if we are meant to set the table for Jesus, who is on the way, our honored guest. And then he returns as he said he would, and the table is ready. We have not been idle. It's always been ready. And then the human race sits down for a meal together, to come and commune with one another and with God. Our work today is to keep busy while we wait for this better world. And who knows what better world is possible for us in the here and now. That's what we discover along the way as we continue to let our light shine. And if we are to believe the Gospels, the party has started before the guest of honor has fully arrived. It's now, it's here. But we keep our lights burning anyway, and the world will not be taken over by the darkness. And these parables are meant to serve as a call to action in the meantime. These are not waiting parables, and they certainly are not meant to be fear or anxiety-inducing parables. They are parables that call us to a greater hope in defiance of the problems we face in the world, holding our light out in the face of the darkness. And while we are waiting for the surprising interruptions of God's realm into our lives, we are called to keep our lights burning in the meantime. We keep our tables set in expectation that our help is just at the door. We share the good news, inviting others to the good work. And as we remain busy, then the waiting doesn't seem so unbearable. Now, because we are so busy cultivating life and bringing light into the world, it hardly seems that we are waiting at all. Our help will arrive, has arrived, and we know that it will continue to arrive. Good news will surprise us again and again and give us reasons to laugh. And someday, all will be well. Even now, some things are well. So to say the words one more time from verse 32, don't be afraid, because your Father delights in giving you the realm of God. I trust the voice who spoke these words, and because I trust Jesus, I can speak these final words with conviction. Help is on the way. It may soon surprise us. God is faithful, and because this is so, we don't have to be afraid anymore.